so many different fitness gyms now. By far, we will be the best.
Whenever you are.
Awesome. Well, I won't take too much of your time. I know you're a busy man. Are
Okay.
you exclusively doing the No Filter Network now with the show with Sean Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing consulting stuff for some other companies and stuff like that, but
Right.
I mean, that's pretty much like the fun I'm having. That's what we're doing for the main.
Right. No, that's
deal these days.
like you have a few different gigs, but the one that you're proud of, the one that sticks out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's basically what I'm doing, like 3 or 4 different hats, but this is the thing I pride myself on for sure.
Yeah, it's addictive, right? It's weird how that works.
And now that we know how like Zoom and Skype and all this stuff works to talk virtually, like, oh my God.
You
knew about this 10 years ago?
Oh, it changes the game totally.
I mean, both good and bad. Like, we're able to talk, but at the same time, like, if you're a part of the media scramble trying to get, interviews in the club.
Oh, yeah, no way. It's a whole different game now. Yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't think it's going to go back to normal, at least not 100% the way it used to be.
I totally agree. No, absolutely not. You look at just even the technology we're using right now, but like when we do the show, like me and Sean, I have a roadcaster and we got all the mic setups and all that kind of stuff. And you realize that you can do a lot of remote stuff for cheaper than, what it used to be to produce a show or a game or something like that. And like, I'm always thinking of my friends who are like, tech managers and camera guys and stuff like that. And I hope there's still a fit for them, as we keep moving forward,
Are you using like a high def camera right now, like 4K?
Yeah, I have a Panasonic. This is one fun thing that me and Sean, since we started the podcast, we would get different cameras and we would do this, we would do that. You've probably done the same thing. Like you Google, oh wait, should I get this? And then it's like, oh my God, I need an Ethernet cable. And then you just start learning like a whole new language that you never thought you had to learn.
God. Like when you first start, you're like, oh wow, that was great. Like we can see each other, but the Zoom audio is
right.
And then
exactly.
Every episode you pick up on something different, and then you work.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to dig deep, kind of basically go back to when it all started for you, working, producing, not only, in Major League Baseball, but, just in professional sports in general. Because you got an English literature degree, if I'm correct.
Yeah, good research there. I went to Columbia University. When I was in high school, I was fairly decently recruited to play baseball and a little bit of football, actually, as short as I am. And I was looking at schools and I had scholarships and things like that. But, when I was like 14, 15 years old, like I really got into like Baseball Tonight and I was really into ESPN like most kids my age were. And I knew I wanted to do something like that. I was actually a huge fan of like Peter Gammons and more of the writer guys because I knew I wasn't really going to be a Major League Baseball player, but I want to stay close to sports in general. And it's funny, when I was getting recruited, it was like, okay, I'm not going to go pro, so it's scholarships, it's going to a really great baseball school, or should I go to a school that I can learn and have a degree to fall back on? And that's why I chose Columbia. Plus, it was kind of close to home, growing up on Long Island, and it just fit. But then when I got there, the funny thing is, so I was in college from 96 to 2000. And in 96, it was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to become a sports writer. And then I'm going to try to figure out a way to get that into TV and then be like a Peter Gammons or like now we have so many of them, Ken Rosenthal's and all those kind of guys. But something switched at that time because newspapers were going away. So while I was in college, I really had to make a shift because, and again, I majored in English comparative literature, but it was basically a journalism degree. So I was going to become a writer. But by around 98, like newspapers were going away. All the reporters were trying to figure out how to make a new living and how to do that. And the last couple of years when I was in college, I was like, I really don't know what to do because I don't know where the landscape is going to be. And it's funny because there are a lot of comparisons to that now because TV is in one direction and what we're doing right now, a podcast or like any kind of live streaming or streaming events and all that kind of stuff, it's starting. There's another one of those little waves going right now where there's going to be some adjustments to be made for creative people. But going back to then, it really started changing. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's better if I go work for an ESPN or something like that. And there weren't many of them. There was just ESPN and Fox Sports. There were no regional networks. So I did, luckily, surprisingly enough, there was a vice president at ESPN who I found online when it was like early online years. So it took me a few months to find this guy, but he played baseball at Harvard, and he was a VP at ESPN in a totally different department. But I got to talk to him, went there, and, you know, it was tough leaving New York. It was tough leaving a big city for like Bristol, Connecticut. But I was like, this is going to be my grad school. And I was there for 5.5 years. And that's kind of how I started moving in this direction.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on, you kind of, in a way, platforms were hard to come by, where today anybody could have their own podcast, anybody could have their own show, and it's hard to digest and find which shows actually like legit and,
right.
Not legit, but yes, legit, but at the same time, credible, like anybody could be in their basement doing a show.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So where it's watered down, I still think the same type of things that make anything successful in sports television or sports production. Like, you still got to, at the end of the day, the audience is going to figure you out, in the first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of doing something outside of the box of, oh, I'm turning on ESPN or I'm turning on my local sports network. Your audience is there because they're smart enough to know they're going to like good content. So yeah, as much as it's more watered down now, you still got to be good and you still have to be talented, I think, to do it and have a platform where you're giving an audience something, that they want to hear.
Yeah, and they tend to weed out the bad ones regardless. Mm-hmm. It's just instead of, 10 different platforms back in 2000, it's 10,000 platforms in 2021, and it's a lot to come by really, really good content. Like you see Barstool Sports and John Boy Media, just like those two guys exploding.
Killing it.
And they've been doing great content for years, but it was like 1 or 2 posts that they did, like the effing Savages, one for the Yankees and Aaron Boone, that really set them off. And, like, you keep going, and then eventually someone will notice.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And if you I the thing I've learned about this kind of new world I'm living in, like, the TV stuff was amazing. I loved it. I loved doing it. I still do some stuff with that when I consult and things like that. But I didn't know what I was turning into or what I wanted to do. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've made some transitions along the way. I've basically been at major sports networks for most of my career. And the cool thing is, like, learning the term content creator. Like, you look online and you hear people who are like Instagram, what do they call it? Influencers. I think that's kind of a BS term, but I do like the term content creator because I think that's what a lot of people are doing now. And if you can create content that's not, like I said, that has some substance to it, there's an art form to that I'm learning now. That's really cool. And it's exciting, actually, because in the last probably 5 or 6 years, the television industry and whatever we were doing when we started streaming, it started to get very consistent across the board, and nobody was really challenging each other as much. And I think now you got to be at the top of your game, and you got to have something special to offer people where they're going to pay attention to you rather than paying attention to the other billion people that are doing the same thing,
I've never understood the term influencer. It's like
yeah.
There's a few people that like legitimately like influence people.
Sure.
I get that. Like your goal is to provide value for other people, but then there's some people who just post stuff to brag, basically. Like, how are you an influencer?
Right.
Like in the sports world, specifically talking about the Barstools and the John Boy Medias, even ESPN, Fox Sports, NBC, whatever you want to call it, like to be able to, like you said, develop that niche, develop that talent and skill to. Again, provide value to an audience, and at the same time, I'll use the word again, influence them to want to continue following your stuff. Like, there is a skill to that.
Right. And one thing I'm actually trying to I'm still wrapping my arms around. That's interesting and annoying at the same time, but I know it's important. It's like, what you post on an Instagram compared to a Facebook, for example, like you have to be in two totally different mindsets for that. And you have to you got to kind of take your big platform. Okay, here, we just did an hour of something. Where does it go? How are people going to see it? How am I going to reach people? Well, you're going to do that super quick TikTok thing, for TikTok, but maybe you can be a little more long form on Facebook and things like that. And it really is a time right now where I think we're still figuring out what the medium's going to be for people to, click and watch compared to what they're watching on their television. I really do love sitting on my couch and having a nice big TV screen and watching something. But I know, you can't forget about the people that don't want to do that anymore, because otherwise nobody's going to pay attention to you. It's unique.
Where would you say that, not just content creation, but just streaming services altogether in the next decade are going to be? Because, like, you could just easily stream a game on YouTube TV, or, ESPN Plus has stuff online that you could just go to on your phone or on your laptop.
It's something I think about I really think about it every day. Something pops up in my head where I'm like, oh, is this where we're going, or is that where we're going? It's extremely interesting because, like I said, I don't think look at it this way. You're never going to have a Super Bowl party with 40 people and just say, hey, everybody just bring your phones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to have that broad venue. And again, I do like looking at my phone, which everybody does too much probably, but
way too much.
I'll do it in commercial breaks of something that I'm watching while I'm sitting there watching it. So I think there's a danger in saying nobody's going to watch television again, cut your cords, whatever, because there's no way. There's no way that's going away forever. On the flip side, the streaming and all of that has gotten so big that I also think that's going to have like a little drop off at some point in the next 2 or 3 years, where we find a happy medium between the two things. Like, I can't imagine, not having the ability to have everything. And also, there are so many streaming platforms now, and they're big time, like YouTube. Between YouTube and Yahoo and Amazon and everything, like that's big money competing with big money. And so they're not going to stop fighting, the battle to see who's going to get the most. But at the same time, you can see some things on Amazon that you can't see on Hulu, for example. And that's why I don't think TV is going away. I don't think cable's going away anytime soon. So somewhere, like I said, I think there's going to be a happy medium where it kind of levels off. But right now, you don't know who's going to win the battle in the industry.
Right. And they're all, like you mentioned, like some of the different services, like off the top of my head, if you want to see a movie, you catch it out on HBO or Peacock or Amazon Prime, and some of those services have something different to offer that the other one doesn't offer, which you see in the sports world too today with, ESPN and Fox Sports were like the two head honchos for many years. And now my generation's calling is probably Barstool Sports at the top there, right? I think you can say that at this point. They've blown up over the past 5 years, I'd say. I'm not necessarily one of those, what do they call them, stoolies or whatever, like people Barstool Sports. But, like, you've got to recognize what they've done.
Oh, unbelievable. It's been
it's a totally different, diverse culture, too. You're not going to get what they do on ESPN or Fox Sports or anything like that.
Never, and that's the other thing that you get walking outside of like a television screen is you walk outside of, the rules and regulations. Like on our podcast, you can curse. For 20 years, I worked in an industry where an F word or an S word or pick your word popped out, I'm like, oh my God, we're all gonna get fired. And it's like you said, there's just different outlets to it. And, not having the FCC can empower a lot of people. It can make a lot of people stupid if they, just decide that that's why they're doing it. But in general, it's there's a lot to learn. There's a lot going on. And like you said, what year did you graduate? Like high school or college? I'll ask.
Just graduated college this past spring. Graduated high school 2017.
There you go. So I'll give you a perfect comparison. So I graduated college in 2000. And like you said, when I graduated college, it was ESPN or Fox Sports. And Fox Sports was just kind of almost there. And then as things started progressing, then you got, all of a sudden New York did this thing. Oh, it was the Yes Network. And then all of a sudden you started seeing the regionals. And there was a certain time when I was at ESPN where I would actually talk to a higher up going, I think I want to get back to New York. And they're like, well, good luck, because there's nothing really there for you. Now you could work for, the Yes Network, SNY. You can work for New York One. You could just get a camera and do what we're doing right now and figure it out. So that's a really cool thing about the way the industry is turning. But like you said, now there are so many ways to go. And when you add what you're saying, you graduated college thinking Barstools is the thing. Like, you would have never thought 15, maybe even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that I don't even want to call it just a website, like an entity would be able to compete with ESPN or Fox. Like, that's crazy. And I think it's awesome, but I also think there's a lot of navigating to do with it,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's a learning process every day for them anyways, like
right.
They're so brash sometimes that they got to be like, okay, that didn't work. Well, let's go back to the drawing board. I feel like they're just throwing stuff at the wall, just seeing.
They definitely are. Yeah. But that's where you get the freedom to do that in that platform that you never had that freedom. You still don't at a national network that has, different types of commercial breaks and different types of sales going into it. When somebody's not paying you to do something, you have a lot more free will than if they're telling you, here's what you're doing, and you got to do it in a certain way, otherwise we're going to stop paying you.
Right.
That's where the creativity part is cool.
And working at some of these organizations for as many years as you did, just experiencing some of the people that you worked with, because, you talk about the certain level of freedom on things. It's because of, endorsements, sponsorships, the higher up things, like where the revenue comes from, like you got to be a professional in a sense, where like Barstool, they've gone their own route. Obviously they have big time paying partners that love what they're doing, and it's a totally different, diverse culture. But do you know anyone specifically who, again, has worked at ESPN for so many years, who has worked at Fox Sports for so many years, that really does not buy into that new culture of having that freedom space on a platform? Not just like,
sure, certainly, yeah. You get to certain places and you see people who are lifers, and there is no knock on that whatsoever.
Right.
Like, if I were in a different place in my life and a different time, I'd still be at ESPN, and I'd be there for, I don't know, 22 years now, and it'd be cool, and I would have my environment. And so, yeah, there are still people that are holding on to, and look, to a degree, like I said, I still like sitting down and turning the TV on. And I still think that what some of the networks are doing, all of the networks are doing, they're challenging each other. And it's really cool. Like, every year, if you ever get the chance to go to like the Sports Emmy Awards, it's cool to see that everybody's rooting for each other and going, wow, what you guys did was awesome at CBS. Somebody from you see it all the time. It's a fraternity, sorority / thing. And I really do think it's really cool that everybody does root for each other in the industry. But sure, there are definitely, I definitely have people who say, like, screw if you watch Howard Stern hates podcasting. And I consider Howard Stern a genius as far as media is concerned.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I agree with him on his reasoning for why he thinks podcasting's stupid and you should be on a radio format. Like,
what was his reasoning?
Oh, I don't want to talk for him, but I just think he thinks. Yeah, and again, when he first started hitting it hard, I think it was more like, what is this like? I've been working on this for years, and all of a sudden you can just plug something in, and any jerk can be
right.
can be me. But I still, I don't think that's his reasoning behind it. I wouldn't speak for him, like I said. But again, the main point is that there's so many ways to do it now. I'm excited for, I'm more of like outside of the box and creativity and things like that. So the more options you have for that, great. Do I get like a little annoyed when I see somebody who I don't think is as talented that just happened to hit it for a minute?
Right.
That's a little annoying. And I would say most of the old school people, even if you look in music, like it's the same thing with Pandora and Spotify and it, even Facebook and YouTube and things like that. People can get famous real quick without putting in the same work that some of the old school people did. And I think a lot of the people who are really down on the transition from TV to this whole new global thing we're doing are probably just a little annoyed that, it's a little too easy to do it sometimes these days.
Oh, and again, the reason I asked the question, because like you said, like there's those lifers out there. I interviewed Jack Curry from the S Network.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 years ago. Like his opinion could completely have changed on this. But,
Mm-hmm.
like when I came up to him, I'm just a young kid, had a man bun at the time, like didn't really look the part of like a reporter, right? So he's like, oh, are you from one of those like raunchy Barstool Sports affiliates? Like, okay, like he's one of those guys that probably doesn't like, like the new generation, like. Because
well, it could be, but don't forget, again, Jack Curry is almost the exact type of person that I was talking about. First of all, I think he's great. I think he does great stuff. But he was somebody, he was a writer and a reporter, and now he is an on-air talent because that was where the transition was made in his industry. You couldn't just sit there and write for a newspaper anymore if you wanted to, support a family. So I see what he was saying there, but I also think I think what he went through is very similar to what people your age are going through right now, as far as what is this media landscape?
Oh, 100%. Like even me as a 22-year-old kid trying to navigate, a quote unquote platform, just posting stuff and seeing like one kid, like you said, like as an example of someone just hitting it big on one post and they have like no talent in a sense. Like they didn't work hard for it as, someone who spent 10 to 20 years like a Jack to get to the position that he's in today.
Right. Exactly. And, you can't fault them. You got to be happy for everybody. You want everybody to be successful in this industry, but there is that slippery slope, and, it's all about evolving. And the good thing about it is that it's no matter what's going on, it's for creative people. And the creative, I actually think it got a little stagnant in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years. And as horrible as this pandemic has been, it has kind of rejuvenated like creative thinking as to how to put a broadcast on in any way, shape, or form. And even, grandparents could talk to grandkids just like that, just like we're talking to you right now last year. And we're lucky to have that. And I think the more you can open your mind to trying to figure out how to use those same platforms to create something, to create content, whether it's sports TV or any kind of TV or any kind of, murder mystery podcasts that are all real popular right now, then it's cool that it's going on this way.
Oh, 2020, complete disaster overall. But like, again, if you were quote unquote privileged enough or, fortunate enough to be in a position where like, okay, like you can sit down and kind of figure out what your next move was going to be in any industry, really. Like any business, whether you're in sports, real estate, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, whatever, like you could use a podcast, you could use a certain form of social media platform in order to get the word out, spread your, again, quote unquote brand. And because anybody could do this.
Right. That's the thing. Anybody can do this, but you gotta have your stuff together these days. Yeah. You gotta be good. And it's a little uncomfortable about the like immediate reaction you get, but with all the analytics of like, how podcasts are being seen or how streaming is being viewed and all that, and downloads and subscribers, like there's a serious immediacy towards who's listening, but you can also, the other cool thing about that is you can angle and move and say, oh, wait, I'm not hitting the audience I'm trying to hit. So how do I get them? Where do I find them? And again, it brings a process to another like intellectual level where it's cool to see these days.
Yeah, it's kind of like finding your niche.
Right.
Sense, right? And that could be a hard thing to do, even if you do have an exact thing that you're talking about. Like it's hard to find that niche, like personality wise, like what different elements can we bring to this show? What different segments can we bring?
Absolutely. And that's part of the awesomeness of it too. And if you have the guts of something good, whether it's on TV or on a streaming platform, I think you'll get there. Like Sean Casey and I do this podcast now. We've done 22 now. And we were talking the other day, and like from the first day, and we put them all on our YouTube page. And I'm like, on the one hand, I'm so uncomfortable by how like the first 4 or 5 of them looked, because the audio was bad and like it just wasn't the show we wanted to do yet, but whatever. But the process, and if you have the guts of something that's good, where people go, oh, this is going to be good one day, and you suck them into it and you keep building from that. Like now it's really cool to look back on the first couple episodes and go, wow, look how much work we've done to kind of create. I'm looking at your studio is awesome right now. You got that background, you got the lighting is all awesome. I bet that wasn't the first day you were probably like, what did I do? Like you know what I'm saying?
Started it in my basement bar room 4 years
ago. There you go. Yeah. And that's cool. And it's cool to, like, I watched The Office is a great show. You know, Seinfeld's a great show. If you watch the first season of each of those shows compared to like season 5, when each of them were like monsters, you'll see the production value sucks. You'll see that like Jerry Seinfeld wasn't really as funny or comfortable in that first year. And that's what's really cool about this is like the more you can record it and just get it out there. If you're doing the right thing, you know, anybody who's new to this, just keep pushing, keep trying to do it. And it'll be cool to see your evolution as it goes. And your audience will even appreciate the shitty shows, part of my language, in the beginning of your start.
No, new generation. You can say whatever you want on this.
Yeah, that's true.
As long as it's not too derogatory. There's a line, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that's so true. And I want to ask you about, you know, getting your start and what you wanted to do. Like you said at the beginning, it was kind of, you know, all over the place. Maybe not exactly where you wanted to be at first, but it's like that for everybody, you know, like you go through the ropes and the trials and the tribulations and everything. At what point, like how long do you think it took for you to not only find out like your identity and what you were doing, but at the same time you were being recognized for the work that you were putting in?
That's a great question. So, again, I started at ESPN, and the other thing I'll go back to then, and I think this is a good story for anybody who's getting into this type of industry, which is there's money in it, but there's not many in it when you start. And for years, you got to work for it. So I graduated again from Columbia University. Back then, all my friends were getting all these investment banking jobs, and they're getting like $50,000 signing bonuses. And I graduated college, and my first salary at ESPN, I was a temp PA, and I made $17,500 with no benefits for 6 months. And then if you get kept on, you get benefits. And so those first couple of years were confusing, and you're comparing yourself to like your friends, as everybody does, right? When they get out of college, who's got the best job, you know, like, and whatever. But the thing about this industry, and one of the things that I think that helped me somewhere along the lines in my head, I said, this is my career. This is my job. So I'm making a career out of this. And when you decide to make a career out of it, then you don't worry as much about the money. You grind on to what you're doing. And by the time, I think I was like towards the end of being a production assistant, about to be at the time where I would be promoted to an associate producer, I realized that I had like kind of an eye that was a little different as far as the way I saw how to cut a highlight, or the way I saw how to do a montage, or the way a segment should run. And that was cool at the time because I think everything was kind of the same back then. Because like I said, there were only 1 or 2 networks. And initially I got into a point, I was doing something called the Ultimate Highlight at ESPN. It was Sunday nights. It was the highlight of the week set to like really cool music. We got like, Eddie Vedder would sing a song for it and stuff like that. And I was doing that. And I thought I wanted to be a movie director. And back then there were music video directors who would do like, there's a guy named Mick G who did, I think, a lot of Britney Spears stuff and Backstreet Boys. And then he did, what was it? The 3 girls, Charlie's Angels. Like that was his segue. And I was like, that's what I wanted to do. I love the fast paced music video type stuff and telling stories without anybody actually having to talk, like things like that. And then all of a sudden I transitioned. I got back to cold pizza in New York because they were trying to bring that back up, which eventually became First Take, and it worked. But it was my way to get back to New York. And then I started segment producing. And I swear I never thought I wanted to be a line producer, like produce a live show. And cold pizza went away. I knew I was going to come to MLB because I worked on Baseball Tonight for so many years at ESPN. And I knew they would hire me at some level. And I had a little stopgap. And I wound up at SNY with a former coworker, Brad Como, who's a great guy who brought me in and said, I want you to be a producer. I produced a show. I was there for 6 months. And then I was a line producer for the next 15 years. And I don't know how it started or how I got there, but it was just the process of finding your way into things. Never wanted to do it, but I loved doing it. And it was probably the best thing I ever accomplished in my career.
I mean, you start out thinking this is what I want to do with my life, and then you get your foot in the door, you get all these different experiences, right. You get all these different hats, and you realize there's a lot more to this than I actually thought.
Yeah.
And then you fall in love with something else.
Absolutely. And to go even back further, when I interviewed at ESPN, here's how crazy it can be. I interviewed for 2 jobs. They gave me 2 interviews. One was to be a studio production assistant, and the other one was to work in master control. And the master control job paid more money. And again, graduating college, I'm like, oh, the extra $10,000, I can tell my friends I made an extra $10,000. It's just the way it works. But I was like, I'd be working more in the sports if I take the studio job. But I had no idea. I didn't go to like Syracuse and go to a sports school, or a sports production school or a production school. And I just chose studio. And if I had chosen master control, my entire life would be different. I mean, completely different. And it's just part of the process of growing up and growing in an industry that you just got to go with the flow in some ways.
Wow. So you obviously just fell in love with that type of work then, considering you did it at MLB Network for so long.
Right. Well, I fell in love with the live because I played baseball in college and that ended. And, I always, when I interview former professional athletes, I say, what do you do to get that adrenaline back? And being able to, like we're doing right now, we're talking to each other, your mind's working and you're concentrating and producing a live show, forget about it, especially at MLB Network. Like, when I was there, I did the late show. So we would go on at 10 p.m., off at 1 a.m. And we had an idea. There were big games. We knew there were big matchups that we were going to pay attention to. But there was no rundown, no script, no anything. And you sit down, and for 3 hours, you have to make decisions like that, like that, like that, like that. And that was like crack to me. I was obsessed with that experience, especially like when I was younger and like had, so much energy and was so ready to try new things and do crazy stuff. That was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, and especially my career.
I mean, that goes back to the creative side of things, having creativity, because in that role, you're not like 100% in control, but at the same time, you have control to say,
right,
let's go this direction, let's go that direction.
Yeah, and just having to make a decision really quick. That's a really fun thing for me. Like I always tell like young producers when I'm working with them, especially in a live environment, it's just make a decision. The only bad decision you can make is not making a decision. So make a decision. We'll talk about it after. Was it right or was it wrong? It doesn't matter. It was right because you made it at the time. That was like the exhilarating part of it for me.
So in that line of work, having to make quick decisions like that, or even growing up, introducing yourself to people in the industry, trying to get your foot in the door in a sense. Mm-hmm. What do you think was the biggest mistake or decision you've ever made that you wish you could have been like, okay, tell your younger self now, like probably shouldn't have done that?
It's a phenomenal question. Biggest mistake. I think, wow. That is a great question. I think you can go in two directions with that. One is being too, I don't want to say the word confident, but I want to say too secure that everything's going great right now.
Yeah. I'm
at the top of my game and just sitting on that. I think if I had looked back on my career, I could say, and this is kind of like a dark way of putting it, but it's a truth in this industry. It's you sit there and go, okay, now I've reached a certain level. So now I'm here. And what happens when Michael Jordan became the best basketball player? How many more basketball players were looking at him going, I got to take him down. I got to take him down. And you don't think about the politics of an industry, even though, you work again in sports television, you think, oh, I got into this industry because I'm not going to wear a suit and tie, and I don't have to deal with all the political BS at any other company. Well, guess what? You're working in an industry, doesn't matter. You're still working for a company. There's always going to be people out there to get you, and there's always going to be certain things to navigate in a professional way. And I don't think I did anything wrong. I just think that when you're younger, you don't realize, well, I always thought my talent is here. So I don't need the politics. My talent will overcome the politics, but you do have to learn how to navigate people, become, you can be a leader, but you also have to step back and be a negotiator, and you have to be a peacemaker, and you have to, all the qualities that you need in any type of job still apply to, even if you walk in and sit down and, Prince could have been the greatest guitarist ever, but he still had to be a singer, and he still had to manage his band. Yep. And he still had to figure out if he wanted to do certain PR or not. And that's one thing, if I look back on and told my younger self, I'd be like, don't forget to play the game. Even though you don't want to play the game, nobody ever wants to play the game. You want your talents to speak to themselves, but they never will in any job you ever have. So there you go.
I mean, for the majority of people, again, there's that 1% who posts one thing and, they're Insta famous or whatever. But for most people, like, you have no choice but to quote unquote play the game, right? And
sure.
Trials and tribulations. Like you talk about like growing up, like out of school, like having friends working in finance or, accounting, and all of a sudden, like you talk about that $50,000 bonus right off the bat, and you're thinking like, man, like, am I really like, I'm going after my passion, but is it truly worth it?
Right.
At what point was it like solidified in your mind, like I'm doing what I love and like there's no turning back? It doesn't matter what happens here moving forward, going through all those things.
I'll tell you why, specifically, and it wasn't a certain date, but I would see all my friends who, for the first 5 or 6 years of my career, were, in comparatively speaking, like killing it and doing everything that we all wanted to do when we said we were in high school, like, oh, I'm going to get an apartment in the city and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But it was probably about 10 years into my career when I realized, like, most of my friends who were got those jobs or did this had 5 or 6 or 7 different jobs by that point. And they had changed careers. Now they're all successful, but they were still trying to figure out what they wanted to do for a career and for a life. And it was, like I said, around 10 years in where I'm like, wow, I'm still in the same industry, and now I'm starting to make a couple bucks, and now I'm kind of at the same level as them, but I've honed my skills for 10 years while they're redoing things and refocusing and learning new things. Now, you want to keep learning new things whenever, but that was when I realized, you know what? I'm glad I stuck this out, and I'm better off for it.
Yeah, because at the end of the road, not necessarily the end of the road, but once you finally get to that point of like, this was all worth it. Like you said, you owned 10 years worth of experiences, knowledge, and skills, and created this monster in a sense of like, this is what I do. And nobody's really, I wouldn't say like better at it than me, but like I've reached that point where like I can go up and do what I love because I know I'm great at it.
Right. And you start getting confidence, and you learn more and more the more you stick within industry. Not saying that it's not for everybody. I have a lot of friends who left this industry who have gone on to be really successful in other parts. And I think I'm sure what they learned in the industry helped them in a new job. But like, just as far as, if you're going to go for this, if you're going to try to be in this world we're in, you should just go for it and give it time, and be patient. You need a lot of patience. But that patience does pay off if you're successful.
So at what point, whether it was, doing what you were doing at MLB Network for so long, we talked about the creativity before, or now doing the show with Sean, like big, great personality, obviously chemistry's there. Guests that you guys have had on are phenomenal. When it comes not only personality, stories being told, like the art of storytelling is why I got into this.
Yeah.
That's what sets my soul on fire. At what point did you know that, this all paid off? Like this was the big moment where you kind of realized like, okay, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. This is why I did this.
I mean, I think we're still going through it. And I think every day, honestly, the excitement we from the day we started until now, we're more excited now than we were the day we started. And it's because, we did go kind of on a limb, and I appreciate you saying that about the guests and talk about storytelling. Sean is like one of the funniest.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm talking about one of my best friends. He was one of my wedding parties. So I have an extra special place in my heart, but I've told him this, and I'll tell it to anybody, like where he started when he got off a baseball field to where he is now, as far as the mechanics of flowing through an interview and shifting to different questions and listening and all that stuff. And again, the technology that we're learning every day, we're more excited now than we were in the beginning. I think in the beginning we were both a little super scared, but I think that fear is what kind of helps you, focus and actually do what you want to do. Yeah. And the other part about it is there is a very unique thing to not being at a corporation. And I think it's great. I will not take back anything. ESPN, MLB Network, they built my life. They built my home. And I love a lot of people still at both places. But like to have it be our own and have to learn and call each other and go, wait, I think we're doing this wrong. And wait, who can we have help us? Do you have any friends that do this? Yeah. And, now we're working with PR, and now we have a sponsor. And it's like the excitement of learning that from the start, even though you're older now, is like, it's what's really driving us. We talked earlier this morning. He was on Sean was on the Pat McAfee show, Pat McAfee is like 3 million listeners a day.
Personality, yeah.
Right. And like, and to see like where it's progressed from where it began, and to see that like, it is cool to see that more people are watching or listening, and you get a little bit more of an immediate gratification in this. And you also get a lot more passionate struggle. But I love the process of figuring out how to get better every day is something that I didn't have when I was at a television network, because you kind of knew what was going on and you were just kind of making shifts, and you didn't have total control because the sales team would tell you, hey, this is what we have to do for sales. Right. And the marketing team would tell you this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome. And that's part of why those networks are great. But it's amazing to be, like a one-man band and know that your success or failure is on you. And it's nerve-wracking, but it's fun.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what drives you. Like the more you struggle, like early on, like it's exciting to start a show. Like you said, like you're a bit anxious, a bit nervous going in. And then you go through some of, not necessarily struggles, but I won't use the word plateauing either, but just breaking through that next thing, that next struggle, and thinking like, okay, like that was a great experience. We learned that. And that's exciting, learning more about that and delving into all these different things, whether it is the art of interviewing, content creation, getting sponsors for the show, everything that comes with it, and building relationships and getting to hear cool stories, like when you guys had Jim Leland on, or of course Ryan Dempster, who's a huge personality in his own right.
Yeah,
like when it all comes together, it's awesome.
And I actually think your word plateauing is great, because we felt that, there'd be a couple of weeks where you just go through the motions, but then you're like, you're not improving. So I do think there is a plateauing feel to like, all right, and there's also still, again, it takes. I remember we got to 10 episodes of the podcast, and it was really cool because it was like, everything I've read is get to 10, get to 10, get to 10. And we got to 10, and that was exciting. And it really does make sense because, oh, wow, we did this. Oh, yeah, that was good. Oh, wait, we're going to do it again next week. That means we have to call each other and get a guest and whatever and do everything. And then you start getting to a consistent basis. But the discipline that's involved in that takes so much, and you could really stop at any moment. And I see it not just on podcasts, but on like some shows and some Netflix series, whatever. You see them stop, and I get disappointed. Like there's one super famous comedian who actually had a podcast for about 3 months. A little while ago, and I was so psyched, and it was so great, and he was great, and he just stopped doing it. And I could tell in the last couple of episodes, hearing him talk, I'm like, and he was just done with it, because there's so much strength you have to put into every week going, wait, let me get up, let me do this, it's on me. Like if you have a job at a network or at anywhere, your boss will call you if you're late. Like when you're doing content creating stuff on your own, nobody's going to call you. Nobody's going to say, hey, get out of bed. Hey, do this. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry about that. Boss was calling me. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, like having I'll use the word discipline, like you have you have to have the discipline to do this. Like there's so many people, whether, like you said, like famous comedians or some chump like me doing this, right? Like you get 10 episodes in and you're not satisfied with either the passion for it or, your subscribers aren't going up or anything like that, like, I mean, if you're for that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. But, like there's that intuition to want to do this because you have a goal. Like you should go into this thinking, like you said, like you were excited to get to 10 episodes, like going into it. What were some of your and Sean's things? And this will be the last thing I ask. I don't want to take too much of your time here. I promise. So I tend to ask a lot of questions. But like, what was kind of like, your goal? Was it like one step at a time, like you said, get into 10 episodes, or was there like a larger thing that you had in mind?
No. Well, the initial thing was, hey, let's do this. And it was his idea, and he called me, which was awesome. And I was totally into it. And it was really more of like formatting it, and was the most difficult thing. And we say all the time, we joke, we did like a practice show, and like that night I hung up the phone and I turned to my wife, who knows Sean very well, and I go, oh my God, this could ruin our friendship. Like, cause it was so bad. It was so bad. We didn't know who we were or what we were doing. And so we got a format together. We did the first show and it was good. And so we were like, oh, okay, wait, we can do this. But then as we went along, like we are still to this day, today we talked on the phone, like, wait, we need to start doing this, or we need to start doing that. And now we're like, it's just a matter of the process is the awesome part going, it's like building Legos. Like, you build the house, but like, can we put a doghouse over here? And can we do this? And how do we turn this into a whole environment that is consistent with what we want to talk about and what we have fun with, and add to that people will want to pay attention to. And that was the initial go with it. And we're still like, I can't even explain to you. We're still in the minutia of where we are. I don't even think we're close to what we thought we would be doing. But again, we both are coming from somewhere totally different where we're learning it together. And that's kind of been the fun part about it.
I mean, that's the thing that's going to set your soul on fire, keep you passionate about it to move forward. And all those different elements come together and form this, again, monster in a sense that drives you to move forward and doing what you're passionate about. Yeah.
Well, we had Johnny Bench on, and this is my only name drop of this, but we had Johnny Bench on like a few weeks ago, and him and Sean got into this funny conversation about Chick-fil-A and how they eat it. They go there with their kids, love it. And as a joke, I go, well, Johnny, I'm like, we're not getting paid for this, so maybe you can help us get that sponsor. And first of all, Johnny Bench is like one of the crazier entrepreneurs you'll ever meet in your life. Like, he does things, Google what he's selling, and it's a billion different things. But he said, he goes, no, Rich. He goes, this is a startup. This is a part that's fun. Have fun with it. Have fun with it and build it, and it'll be there later. And you're going to look back on this time and realize that this was the most fun part about the entire journey. So.
Wow. And again, great advice. And I want to thank you so much again for coming on the show, being gracious enough to take the time. I hope we can do this again someday, because I'd love to pick your brain about so much more. My boss has got to use the space.
No, go for it. Anytime you want, buddy. And honestly, I got to thank you. This is the first time I've ever been asked to do an interview. I've never been
really
on this side of things before. So I appreciate it. I think you're doing a great job. I've been watching your stuff. I love what you guys are doing. And, I'm a big fan of your work, so whenever you want me back on again, I'm here, man.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And again, this is the back studio. I got to show you the front studio. Hopefully,
okay, good.
Put up some pictures of stuff that you've done, things that you've done throughout your career, and we could just chat back and forth about that.
Nice. Whenever you give me a call, and I'm ready whenever you are, buddy.
I'm very curious about all aspects of this business, so
awesome.
I'd love to pick your brain more.
Anytime you want, on or off camera. You can email me anytime.
Thanks so much, Rich.
You got it, buddy. Seriously.